we will begin, even if the room is not full, with the presentation. You understood that the third session is devoted to the third panel, let us call it like that. The third panel is devoted to the memory of the Shoah. And we try to include experiences that are a little bit innovative and original to speak about that topic in a way that is not conventional. So the first presentation will be the presentation of a German association called ASF, and her representative, its representative in France is Lisa Saloch, and she will explain what is this association, what it does, what is its history, what are its present activities and future projects. There are a lot of things to say, and I'll let Lisa make her presentation.
All right.
Yes.
Merci. Okay. Victor, Federico, Judith, cher Philippe, chère équipe coordinatrice du Mémorial de la Shoah, thank you so much for having me today. Chère Madame Benain, chère Madame Schram, enchantée, re-enchantée à nouveau, dear ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by introducing myself. Philippe already did it a little bit. And foremost, introduce and explain the work of our organization, ASF, Aktion Sühnezeichen Friedensdienste, for those of you who understand German. In English, we say ARSP, Action Reconciliation Service for Peace, but you'll forgive me, I will just use the German acronym, which I'm more used to. So, I'm lucky enough to have been coordinating the work of ASF in France for a little more than 3 years now. My role is to organize and manage the link with our partner organizations, such as the Memorial de la Shoah. So I myself have a group of young volunteers that a new group every year. They're around 15 to 18, let's say, and they are volunteering here in Paris and in other cities in France.
But it's European, it's all over Europe.
Yes. Yes.
And in Israel, you will speak about it. Okay.
Yeah. Valerie. So maybe I will start actually by giving an overlook of our partner countries and our fields of action today, to then take a step back and take a look back, talk about the history, give some photos to illustrate, to visualize, and then I present to you some of our Jewish projects in more detail, which might be the most interesting for you. Okay, so as you can see, I just have to update this map a little bit and add Greece. So in Greece we do have projects since we have had projects there for 2 years now. As you can see, we are present in Central, Eastern, Western Europe, in the UK, in Israel, and in the US. But I will today be focusing on our work in the European countries. Okay. So the fields. The fields that our organization does work in as of today are mostly, and this is the biggest part of my personal work, the organization of 1-year volunteer services, meaning that young Germans can be sent and will be sent to our 14 partner countries. Also, in return, young people from our partner countries will be incoming to Germany to do their one-year volunteer service. And thirdly, we do have a program uniting British, Ukrainian, and Polish volunteers in an international group. We also do organize international summer camps, which are short-term volunteering services, which take a very, very practical approach, meaning that the group will unite for 2 weeks. Those are international groups, young people, older people, people of all ages, origins, and backgrounds. And they really work together, unite as a group, and for instance, consecrate their 2 weeks to renovate Jewish cemeteries, for instance, to renovate and restore memorial sites. So this is really portraying the very practical approach. Just shortly, a lot of the work that is done in Germany is public relations, so enforcing and promoting the Jewish-Christian dialogue, educational work also to promote the memory of the Shoah. And we are also working with migrant communities since Germany is an immigration country. And we really want to feed off of this richness that incoming communities can bring us. So I will now come to Philippe, your favorite part, the historical photos, which I know you really enjoyed. I try not to spoil. Okay, so what do I mean by a practical approach? I mean that in the 1960s, young people from Germany, following a statement of a, not so young, Pastor Lothar Kreisig, which is the founder of, one of the founders of our organization, he asked young people to come to countries that had been suffering during the Nazi occupation. I tried to translate a short excerpt of his statement that I will read to you. So, Lothar Kreisig, who has a religious, a Christian background, said, as Germans started the Second World War and by that alone made ourselves responsible for immeasurable human suffering. We murdered millions of Jews in a sacrilegious uprising against God. So it's here that you see the Christian background of this gentleman. Those of us who survived the war and who were against it, though, did not do enough to prevent us. Stressing that being against the crimes was not sufficient, since it didn't help in any form. Thank you. Today, we Germans are asking Germans, women, young German that is, women and men of all classes and faiths to volunteer to go to Poland, Russia, or Israel for a year so that we can build a symbol for peace there. So, there's some notions that I would like to stress. Action, which is also included in the name of our organization, means literally a very, very practical, pragmatic action, building with their own hands, young people building with their own hands, building buildings, building and hospitals, things like that. Meaning that by this practical approach can be created links and reconciliation. In the third aspect, which I would like to stress, we really do have this religious connotation, and you also see the symbol, which is a person asking for forgiveness, which is bowing, which is asking in a very, very devout way for forgiveness. Meaning that the young Germans do not have are not guilty, but they need to take on the responsibility for reconciliation. The third aspect that I would like to stress is a service for peace, asking, once again, in this very, very modest way, actually, to come and help rebuild the countries that have been destroyed and help the peoples of those countries that have been destroyed. Okay. So, so the organization was founded in 1958. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. And it is really in the beginning of the 1960s that young Germans were sent to the United Kingdom, where they, here you see a photo that I love, young Germans helping to rebuild the Coventry Cathedral that had been badly destroyed by the German bombardments. Bombing, thank you. We are now crossing the ocean. Here you see Mr. David Ben-Gurion in a kibbutz in the beginning of the 1960s, exchanging with young Germans, and really you see the volunteers devotedly listening to this big gentleman, which they had the opportunity to meet. Next, we are going to Poland, where it was, 1965. So this is really just a short overview. I'm picking some countries just to illustrate a little bit, okay? I don't speak Polish, I'm sorry for my pronunciation. In Oswiecim, close to the Auschwitz Memorial, young Germans did a pilgrimage by bike, and as I mentioned, the aspect of working with their own hands is really important, which you can see in this photo. So they helped to restore the buildings of the current memorial site. Okay, now we are approaching, we are going to France. In Thésée, which hosts, the famous Church of Reconciliation. It was us as volunteers who greatly participated in its construction. You see a lot of young gentlemen, also some young ladies, but mostly gentlemen at that time. Now it's the opposite, actually, today. We have mostly young women volunteering. And this will be our last photo, which is from France also. La Synagogue de la Fraternité, the Synagogue of Fraternity, in which the German volunteers of ASF participated greatly in the first years of its construction. Ça vous va pour les photos? All right. Okay. I would now take a step further and pick just some of the projects that we are working with today. Also to illustrate, I have some photos for you. This is Mrs. Langerova, a survivor of the Shoah that our volunteer Friederike had the chance to work with in the Czech Republic. So the photo is like from 2018, I believe. It's quite recent. And this also illustrates the group of people that we do work with. So you have the elderly, mostly, but not only Shoah survivors. You have the socially disadvantaged people, which can be people of the Rom communities, for instance, people that suffer from exclusion violence. You have our young volunteer Felix working at the women's shelter that is welcoming young women with their children. Here you have a photograph that does not need any introduction. You have Konstantin, who was a volunteer at the Yad Vashem Memorial in Israel. And lastly, young volunteers do work with people with the disabled, elderly and the disabled. Lotte, for instance, accompanied these people during their everyday life, to go shopping, to go to the cinema, really very practical and personal approach and help to those people. So what does reunite all these group of people? All these people are issued of groups that have been suffering through the Nazi regime. Of course, you have Jewish survivors, you have disadvantaged people that the Nazis persecuted for being social, so-called, and also the Romani communities, of course. We have a big part of our work that is historical and research work in famous important memorial sites. And lastly, the disabled that were also persecuted by the Nazi regime. So disabled people and mentally ill people. Okay. So just to mention some of our Jewish partners, which I would like to stress here today. Here at the Memorial de la Shoah, I have 2 volunteers working here for a year, one of which is working in the Photothèque, in the documentation center, and the other one is working for the association Convoi 77 that works on biographies, of those deported by one of the last trains to the east, to the extermination camps of the east. In the south of France, we have a home for the. So I do have 2 volunteers working in a Jewish home for the elderly, l'EHPAD Finque la Colline in Nizza. And I would also like to mention the Institut de la Culture Juive à Lyon. And to really extend this, we also have volunteers working at the Oswiecim Youth Center in Poland. We used to have, and theoretically, we have volunteers working in Ukraine and in Russia, which at the moment is not possible, sadly. We also used to have volunteers working in Belarus, which also for 2 or 3 years has not been possible, sadly. And it's true that I myself am I'm really focusing on France, but I would like to really extend our approach, meaning that peu à peu, I don't know how to say in English, little by little. Yes, so the first, just to make clear, the first countries that the association asked for forgiveness were the ones that the founder considered had been suffering to the greatest extent, I'd say. And then other countries joined the program, which means that now there are a lot of young Germans that go to 14 countries in Europe and overseas, and also incoming people from our partner countries coming to Germany. So I will now begin to conclude. And I would be happy to give further detail later, but I really don't want to take too much time. I just wanted to stress really the principles and the aims of our association, our work, which is not limited to us, but to our partners and the young volunteers. By this practical approach, we strongly believe that this kind of involvement is an effective and approachable, since it's very practically focused approach, and a way to create links and to build relationships with our public. But what I would also like to stress is that in aiming to serve this cause to the best of our abilities, we need to stay modest and to be aware of the limits of our work. It may seem a little strange, but I really, really want to stress this, and let me explain what I mean by this. Neither the young volunteers nor the association or our network will be able to resolve things as a whole, but rather, and by that I refer to our young volunteers mostly, we can be hoping to contribute in the smallest way to be a cornerstone, maybe, and bring a little contribution to the building of international peaceful relationships. I'm most thankful for our partners that are willing to welcome young German volunteers, and also to the young folks gifting 1 year of their time, of their effort, with the utmost dedication. And I would like to keep the most important for last. I think those in the Jewish world, in the Jewish communities, who are open to work with our young German volunteers. Thank you so much for your attention. I'd be happy to take questions later. And if you would like me to develop like another aspect, I'm totally open to that, Philippe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There are plenty of things to tell about our partnerships, and for instance, there is a huge proportion of members of the Bundestag who are former volunteers of ISF, and then during their career, this experience, it brings something to their relation to the Jewish world and to Israel. It's one aspect of this experience. Huh? Okay, so we will have our second presentation by Laurence Schram, who comes from Belgium, specifically from Malines, which is the main internment center in Belgium that was the transit camp for the deportation of the Jews during World War II. And today it's an important memorial, an analog to, by analogy to this memorial, this is the equivalent in Belgium. And she has made an important research in history about the history of the Shoah in Belgium. But today we asked her to present a specific project that this memorial has organized on a European level, the Shoah and the policies of the various countries of Europe. She will explain this, what is this project.
Thank you, Philippe, for this wonderful introduction. First of all, I will apologize for my bad English. It's not my favorite language, but I will try to do my best. So I first want to thank the organizers of the EDJC meeting today and the Memorial de la Shoah for this invitation. So my presentation will be divided into two parts. I will start with a short overview of the history of the museum, from the first one, the Jewish Museum of Deportation and Resistance, to the new one, Caserne d'Ossa, Memorial Museum and Research Center on the Holocaust and Human Rights. Then I will introduce you to our Holocaust Police and Human Rights program. But before doing that, I think it's useful to explain the role of the Dossin barracks during the Second World War. So from the 27th of July 42 till the 31 July 44, more than 25,000 Jewish deportees and 353 Roma people, men, women, and children, were sent from this SS assembly camp to Auschwitz-Birkenau. More than 62% of the deportees were immediately murdered after having passed through the selection in the extermination center of Birkenau. Out of the 9,500 people who were kept for slave labor in the concentration camps complex of Auschwitz-Birkenau and others, only 1,257 have survived. During the night of the 3 to the 4 of September 44, the Nazis abandoned the barracks, fleeing because the Allies were approaching, and the building was then used as a prison for collaborators and traitors before the Belgian army reoccupied it after April 46. So here, that's a view of the day of the opening of the SS assembly camp. In 1995, the Jewish Museum of Deportation and Resistance opened its door. It was located in the front part of the building where the SS assembly camp was settled. The exhibition was devoted to the history of the Judeo-Site in Belgium and northern France, because Jewish and Roma people deported from the Caserne d'Ossat were coming from Belgium and northern France. And the challenge has been to bring the main aspects of the Shoah in Belgium in an extremely limited space. Despite this constraint, we have nevertheless managed to set up a dedicated museum, a special room to the 28 deportation trains. It was designed on the principle of one picture for one transport, one family picture, or one person. The people you see in purple on the picture are those who didn't survive. The people in white are not deported from this transport, and survivors were colored in blue on the pictures. So, showing so many pictures was really essential for us to make the statistics more concrete and to humanize the victims in a symbolic way and with a sober graphics. It was essential that the visitor has the impression that those pictures could be retrieved in their own family history, family albums. Our aim was to restore the human dignity of the deportees and of people who had been stigmatized and dehumanized almost to the point of destroying them and their traces forever. So in 2010, the first Jewish Museum of Deportation closed its door, and the Flemish government decided to transform the small private museum in a big European museum dependent on the Flemish government. 2 years later, Caserne d'Ossat's new permanent exhibition opened its door in a brand new building. So the historical, je sais pas si on peut montrer avec ça. The historical building is this one. Is this one, sorry. And this is the new museum which was built from 10 to 12. Alors, in this new building, we have our new permanent exhibition, which is based on 4 central topics. The first one is the analysis of the behavior of perpetrators, victims, and bystanders. It's important to put the attention on the 3 points, and not only on the perpetrators or not only on the victims, because there is also a lot to learn about the bystanders. The second topic is the spiral of violence, which helps analyzing the mechanism which can lead to from discrimination to, in an extreme point, to mass murders. Also, the margin to obey, to succumb, to refuse, or to resist. Even if this margin is quite little and tiny, it's possible to react, and that is shown by the resistance into the Jewish population. The last one is the connection between the history of the Judeocide and the extermination of Roma people and other rights, human rights violations in other places and other times. So the first floor is entitled Mass. It makes a connection between the fate of the masses of Jewish refugees. In reality, they were not so much numerous, and now the mass of refugees who are coming to our country these days. The second floor is called anguish, but it could also be called courage. Attention there is drawn to discrimination as tolerated, encouraged, or legalized by a state or a political regime. Here we make a parallel between the anti-Jewish laws and, for example, Belgian colonization in Congo, apartheid in South Africa, or racial segregation in the United States. And the last floor, of course, is called death. It's dedicated to genocide and mass murders, extermination. Parallels are there drawn between other mass murders or genocide. For example, you have here the genocide, a picture showing the genocide of the Herero and the Namas in Namibia. We are also talking about the genocide of the Armenian people, about the genocide of the Tutsi, but also on the mass murders committed by the Khmer Rouge. Our aim there is to make our visitor think about the past, but also about the present. One of the strongest points of our museum is the same as the former museum. Human being is central in our approach. And we want to show the concrete consequences of discrimination, extermination, mass murders on the concrete daily life of people and consequences for the community. So Caserne d'Ossa is dealing with the Belgian case, which is a little bit exceptional because other museums of the Holocaust are dealing with the whole history, but we have chosen to focus on our national history. And so, taking the Holocaust as a basis, Caserne d'Ossa searches for persistent mechanism of group pressure and collective violence that, under extreme conditions, can result in mass murder or genocide. Our approach provides visitors with analytical grids that allow them to think critically, analyze and compare concrete crisis situations in different places and times. This originality has enabled the museum to develop an educational program for the integrated police. So we believe that our historical expertise can be used for anti-discrimination education. We encourage participants of our tours and workshops to reflect on contemporary phenomena as racism, exclusion, discrimination on the ground of origin, religion, belief, skin color, gender, and so on, in order to help them adopt an active social attitude to help them prevent escalation of hate and to finish to dramatical consequences. The initiative was taken by Caserne d'Ossat, joined by the integrated Belgian police, that means the federal and local police forces, and UNIA, an independent public institution fighting discrimination and promoting equal rights for everybody in Belgium. We started the HPHR project in 2014. Together, we developed training strategies in which historical knowledge is used to refine the existing official strategies for dealing with human rights issues. The police works puts the policeman in the front of line of law enforcement. More than other people, policemen face human rights dilemmas on a daily basis. They are responsible for maintaining public order and enforcing the laws, but they have also to ensure that they themselves scrupulously respect the laws. So they must be able to make ethical choice and decision as a part of their daily job. Police officers are frequently so exposed to other hateful opinions and behavior. They also come into frequent contact with people living in precarious conditions, people who already endure racism, religious, sexual, or other discrimination. And that makes the policemen a strategically important target group for us. The aim of our program is to make police employees, civilian or non-civilian, aware of the various forms of discrimination and to encourage them to fight both in society, but also into the police corps itself. What is special in our approach is that we are training the trainers. That means that we in Caserne d'Ossat are working to educate educators from the police who will afterwards take the program in their own hands and carry it out by their own way. So it's important because policemen are better in place to speak about such topics to other policemen than someone coming from the outside. So Caserne d'Ossat focuses on the historical aspect of anti-Jewish laws and the role of the Belgian police during the final solution. As you know, in 1942, especially in Antwerp, the police corps collaborates to the mass arrestation of Jews of the city. From there, UNIA and the integrated police extend the analysis to cases that participants have already faced or can face. For example, sexist jokes about new female colleague. We begin at a really low level of discrimination, humor. Oh, she's only 22 and she must join us in operating on the in the street, it will be a problem. Or other cases, the evacuation of homeless people from a public place. So during a patrol, a policeman remarks that one homeless immigrant was each day on the same place, and people were complaining about that. So what did they do? In the evening, the patrol stopped him, arrested him, searched him, handcuffed him, and put him in the van. And one of the responsible explained, there is no point in taking him back to the station. It will take your hours to write your report, and he will be released immediately. Take him to the forest instead. So the migrant got out of the vehicle in the middle of the wood. He was put naked and abandoned there. And when the police people left, they explained, you'd better not come back to us too quickly, otherwise you will have to deal with us for real this time. So no report was made. We only heard about this case from another policeman who was present but who didn't have the courage to intervene. So the training is also intended to be interactive. It's not only ex cathedra. The participants have to move from discussion and theoretical analysis to role-playing. The aim is to identify good practice, manage conflict, avoid escalation of violence, and find responses which are proportionate to the situation. One of the important issues in this training is the dominance of the hierarchy and the esprit de corps. Because of this, some police officers may act contrary to their conscience. They give in to group pressure, fearing being excluded by their colleagues, or even subject to harassment. It could also be a problem during an operation where other colleagues could leave the policeman alone facing the danger. So it's not always easy for such a hierarchy to act. So Caserne de Saint took the initiative to bring together museums and memorials collaborating with the integrated police during the 3-year project Connecting Law and Memories. And during the first meeting in 2016 in Mechelen, Caserne de Saint mainly focused on all the good practice. One year later, in 2017, in Amsterdam, the main question was about measuring the impact of such collaboration according to the Inzovu principle. So this model shows how to move the visitor, the participant, from painful emotion to reflection, to awareness, to hope, to willingness, and to action. So that's the theoretical scheme. The challenge is to convert feelings generated by indignation or sadness, compassion, into something positive, and to act to make humanity a little bit better. Museums and memorials of genocide or mass murders must play an active role, I think, in preventing such human rights violations. We are now extending our project to other institutions, for example, the private security sector, the magistrates and the judges, the prison systems, the public transports, and also we are connecting now with a psychiatric institution, and that's for our future. So that's it. I finished. Thank you for your attention. I hope I was in the time.
Thank you very much, Laurence. The memorial in Paris was invited to this European forum twice. There was this very interesting exchange of experiences on the European level. And in most of the countries, the police is training itself on those issues. But here in France, we are, as Memorial, we are the ones who are directly train the ordinary policemen. The hierarchy of the police trusts us enough to let us work directly with 23,000 policemen who went through our sessions of training. But it's an interesting experience with the variants in every country. So the third presentation is by my colleague Aline Benain, who is teaching history professionally, but she is also the chair of a Jewish congregation in Paris, to which I was a member for many years. And she will present something that you have already heard a little bit, because she will present the Hitkansut project, which is very close to the Zikaron Basalon that half of the group here has worked on in the workshops. We didn't plan it when we organized the program, but first of all, half of the group didn't hear about Zikaron Basalon, and the other half will compare the message seen from another point of view that Aline will deliver now. Huh? Okay. I'll let you. We are in the schedule. It's perfect.
Thank you.
Ouais.
C'est bon.
Est-ce qu'il peut nous aider, notre technicien?
C'est bon.
C'est bon? Ah, c'est voilà,
C'est bon,
impeccable.
il n'y a pas de problème.
Excellent.
So, thank you very much, Philippe, for your invitation, and thank you to the memorial for this afternoon. As my colleague, I want first to apologize about my very, very bad English. I try to do my best, but Philippe says to me, you have no choice. So I did it because of this, and because too, I am absolutely sure about the importance and relevant characteristic of Hitkansut program. I think it's a very, very important project, and that's why I am trying to speak in English. So, as Philippe said to you, I'm an historian. I teach history too, and I have the privilege to be the president of Adath Shalom, which is the first Masorti conservative Jewish community in Paris. And so I am going to present you the Hitkansut project. First, as you can see, we see the origin of the project. In the second time, the device itself, and then its development. Hitkansut is an Hebrew word which means gathering in English, and in French we say rassemblement. Rassemblement pour le jour de la Shoah. First Hitkansut took place in Jerusalem in 2015, wrote and edited by the writer Miral Govrin, with the support of the Shalom Hartman Foundation and Waldler Institute. Miral Govrin is an Israeli writer, poet, theater director. She is teaching in Tel Aviv University, and she published many essays and novels. Perhaps you know it. Evzekim, Schnapsot in English, Sur le Vif in French, Ahava à la Chof, The Shores of Ashkelon in English, Amour sur le rivage in French. And you see just here the Haggadah, the word is important, the Haggadah for Hitkansut. This is the first edition. Hitkansut wants to offer a response to a major question for our time, which is also an essential challenge: how to pass down the memory of the Shoah when the last survivors are leaving us, and to pass down in a performative way. Remember, to honor, and to build a better future. It's a common point, it seems to me, between our three interventions. To remember, to honor first, but also to shape a better future. And it's also, it seems to me, the project of this memorial. Let's listen to Michal.
We move to greet you tonight as you gather for Hitkansut in North America. The Passover Haggadah tells us that in every generation a person is obligated to see themselves as if they personally left Egypt. This ancient commandment is more relevant today than ever. We still heed the voices of the last of the survivors of the Shoah, but in the near future we will be the ones who must carry the memory of the Shoah, and we will be responsible for passing that memory on to future generations. Personal and national memory is not merely a reflection on the past. The way we remember shapes the present and the future. How can we ensure that the memory of the attempted destruction of the Jewish people is not merely a legacy of trauma? Our tradition offers a model for remembering in ways that both honor the past and build a stronger present and future. We are told, remember that you were a slave in Egypt. This commandment to remember serves as a foundation throughout Jewish history for a set of values, laws, and practices that uphold freedom and human dignity. Drawing upon this example and with a sense of urgency, as an Israeli writer and the daughter of a survivor, I convened a research group that created Hitkansut for Yom HaShoah. This new ritual is built around the core idea that we are obligated not only to remember, but also to shape a better future in response. I carry, as many of you, my parents' legacy. My mother, Rina Govrin, lost her first husband and son, my half-brother Marek, in the Shoah. A secular Zionist from Krakow, she survived the death camps and the death march with other 9 ultra-Orthodox women, graduates of Beis Yaakov seminar. Despite their differences, their mutual respect and solidarity helped them survive. After liberation, my mother embraced life as the commander of the Bricha in north of Germany. Hitkansut is an occasion to share our personal stories, to draw from them to understand the present. Together, we create a living memory of personal and collective destiny and responsibility. In a world of growing threats to human dignity and life, in a year struck by war and disease, the memory of the Shoah is a lesson of never again and a call to struggle always to affirm life. Since 2015, Hitkansut has been held in hundreds of locations throughout Israel. I am moved to see the Hitkansut ritual adapted for North American Jews. We share tonight this legacy and this hope.
As you can read it, we have here the main motto, one of the main motto of the Passover Haggadah. We can read that we are obligated to see ourselves as we personally leave Egypt. It's the same dynamic for the Seder Hitkansut. You have on the image the Seder. Seder means order in Hebrew. the seder of the seder Hitkansut, from enter to reflect. Remember, Zachor in Hebrew, which is, since the Torah, a major injunction. Lament, kina or kinot, on plural in Hebrew, like for Tisha B'Av, which commemorates the destruction of the two temples. We are responsible for remembering, and remembering with responsibility, both in the same dynamic way. I want to show you two examples. First one from remember part of the Seder, and second one from the reflect part of the Seder. Just before, the Seder, as you know, is a structure, and each community, each group, each family can nourish the Seder as it wants, with text, songs, pictures. First, you have one example.
And these too I shall remember, the barefoot dream path like lightning, a joyful flash through the map of my nostalgic sleep, the quiet road that brought together all the countries, streets, houses into one scared awake Jew street, with its warm stones, its moldy wood and somber bricks, accepting my light feet, the spice shops, the kasha and flower stores, the herring stands, the kerosene vendors, the soapy barber shops, the toupee and wig makers, the almonds, dates, and figs, the freshly baked sour bread, the poppy seed and onion rolls, the dark tea rooms with drowsing black worms on their warm fireplace, the meager pastures, the sleepy half-alive graveyards, forever watching over the frightened life.
The poet from Lublin, the city of Monika Garbowska, that we've met a few hours ago.
I will remember the Jews in their diasporas, in their communities from east to west, in Europe, on the shores of the Mediterranean, and throughout the Middle East, those who were destroyed or displaced. And I will remember the Jewish communities that stood beside their brethren in the days of destruction.
Please join us in remembering life before the Holocaust. In the chat box, please share a memory, a sight, a face, a sound, a smell, a song of life before the war.
People are together, it's better, and they can speak, but if they can to be together, they can write, as you see on the left of the screen, in the chat box, to share their remembrance, their thought, as you see here. The second extract is a part from Reflect at the end of the Seder.
The human was created as a unique being in the world, to teach that one who destroys a single soul has destroyed an entire world, and one who saves a single soul has saved an entire world.
First one, this one, come from the Jewish tradition, as you see it. It's a very famous text from the Mishnah, and the second text is a poem by Michal Govrin.
The memory of yesterday is the call of today. I remember that I was exiled and will defend my home, my people, my kin. I will open my door to the stranger, the refugee, the displaced. For my people were the strangers and pursued. The memory of yesterday is the call of today. For I was the starving one and scavenged for bread. I was the naked one and sought a human face. My people were rounded up and slaughtered, and the world was silent then. The pain of yesterday is the call of today. I remember, and will share my wealth and well-being with those distant and near, the poor of my town and the foreigner. In days of peace and in tempestuous times, the horrors of yesterday obligate me today. I will guard against evil and its many seductions. I will not let slogans lead me astray, igniting hatred, erasing humanity. The wounds of history warn us today. And when war erupts and again strikes the world, I will not stand idly by. I will not watch from a distance. I will remember that the only actual border runs through the human heart. And the voice that cries out from one people to another, the voice that cries out, calls to me. The memory of the Shoah is a call.
So, a few words about development of Hitkansut in Israel, in North America, and in France. In Israel, as I said a few minutes ago, since 2015, dozens of communities, groups of different affiliation or without affiliation, adopt and adapt Hitkansut. Last year, even in some jail, the Yom HaShoah was celebrated with this Seder. In North America, so you can see on the pictures, there is very good material. They have a lot of possibility to do it. There is a special Agadah, Hitkansut Agadah, and for the last Yom HaShoah, you can see it, a leader's grid and a guide for young people. In France, Adath Shalom is the first conservative community in France, and we asked 4 years ago to Valérie Zenati, which is our Appelfeld translator in French, to translate the Seder Hitkansut in our language. In Adath Shalom, we have for 30 years, we have our own way to commemorate Yom HaShoah, which is a part of our Siddur. And since 2018, we introduced some pieces of Hitkansut after the first part of our celebration. And we change each year the text which nourish the structure. I show you just a very short extract from our Hitkansut Seder in 2019, by Zoom, of course, because it was COVID time. Oh.
Avec la marque en moins, vous êtes livré directement dans votre boîte aux lettres et vous consommez mieux. La lessive, la marque...
Le psaume 44.
So this is the first part, or own celebration. And I'll just show you the beginning of War Hitkansut with two texts in French. First text is the introduction of the Seder, and the second text is a text from a French writer who calls Robert Bobert.
Que je sois loin ou proche, pourtant, nous voulons prendre sur nous la responsabilité du souvenir et nous souvenir avec responsabilité. Et que je possède les mots ou que tu en aies peu, que je sois loin ou proche, que nous nous sentions appartenir ou sans aucun sentiment d'appartenance, recueillons-nous, retrouvons-nous, tentons d'entrer ensemble. Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui. Comment dire ici aujourd'hui, là où il n'y a plus d'êtres humains, et force-toi d'en être un.
Merci Muriel. Je demande maintenant à Daniel de bien vouloir prendre la lecture du texte, d'un extrait d'un texte de Robert Bobert, qui est emprunté à son dernier livre, qui s'intitule « Par instant, la vie n'est pas simple ». Merci Daniel.
En décembre 2002, les éditions Gallimard publièrent une édition de Quoi de neuf sur la guerre, augmentée d'un accompagnement pédagogique. À la suite de quoi, on me demande si je veux bien aller à la rencontre de lycéens qui venaient d'étudier le livre. J'avais donc été invité par un lycée dans la petite ville de Charlieu, près de Roanne. Des élèves de seconde et de première m'avaient accueilli dans une salle aux murs couverts de dessins qu'ils s'étaient appliqués à faire, illustrant leur lecture. J'avais été frappé par un de ces dessins. Je ne sais pas si c'est le mot juste, mais je n'en vois pas d'autre. Il pénétrait dans l'intimité du livre. Un cœur immense, d'un rouge éclatant, remplissant la feuille de papier. Une aiguille et du fil étaient également dessinés, et cette aiguille recousait avec soin ce cœur brisé. C'est un cœur juif, m'a dit timidement une voix près de moi. C'était la voix de l'auteur du dessin, une enfant d'une quinzaine d'années. Quelques jours avant d'aller à Charlieu, j'avais repris une fois de plus la lecture du dernier des Justes. Je l'ai terminé dans le train qui me ramenait à Paris. En dernière page, André Schwarzbart, à bout de souffle, donne les noms des camps de concentration. Et puis, ces mots. Parfois, il est vrai, le cœur veut crever de chagrin.
In 2019, for this Hitkansut, we have the introduction, two texts, the testimony of the survivors, and to end two other texts. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Aline. And for those who didn't grasp the abstract in French, it was taken from a book by a French Jewish novelist, Robert Bobert, who describes a drawing that has been made by a young girl, a French girl, that she wanted to illustrate the suffering of the Jews by a heart that was drawn. It's his experience of meeting with young pupils who are not Jewish and talking about those topics. So we have had those three presentations, and now you have some time free for a discussion. I must say that Michal Govrin, as she has said by herself, is the daughter of a survivor. But during the first half of her life, she didn't want to acknowledge it. She lived a very free life in Israel, and she didn't want to participate to any commemoration of the Shoah. She didn't like it. She thought that it was something boring, like many people, that it was too solemn, too formal, too rigid practice. And after various steps in her life, she reappropriated for herself the story of her mother, of her half-brother who was assassinated. And now the idea is to find new ways to be related to that memory that are adapted to new generations without the rigidity and the formality of the commemorations. I think that all of you are familiar with those questions. So who wants to contribute with our three presentations? Perhaps those who participated to the workshop on Zikaron Basalon may comment on what they heard. You were the one who led it, so please comment or react if you want.
First of all, thank you for this presentation. Hitkansut is, we met with Michal and we met with the team. And of course, we work together. I think Hitkansut is probably Zikaron Basalon 2.0. This is for the well-advanced. This takes it one step further, in our opinion. In fact, we also talked about the Seder. We also talked about the Haggadah. And the Haggadah that you were given in Zikaron Basalon workshop is a collaboration with Hitkansut. So. It's great to have you here and to be able to respond to that. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. You know that you cannot usually make movies during the Seder of Pesach, but for this Seder there is no problem with having movies and showing it like the ones that we have seen. It's technically easier.
I was very very happy to see the engagement of the younger generation with the Holocaust, because I come from North America. I come from Philadelphia, and I have no personal connection to Yom HaShoah, but I make it my business every time that there is a commemoration to go and to be part of the community. And in the last several years, all that I see coming to these memorials, I never see young generation there. I always see the older people coming, the people that, or the children of those that were Holocaust survivors. And it always was, I kept asking people around me, where are the children? Where are those that are supposed to be telling the story later on? So it's, I'm glad to see that there are activities that engage young children, because they are really the one who should be at those memorials. These are the one who should be listening and hearing all of this, and it's a shame that we don't see them.
It's a real problem that you are speaking about, but you know, I'm sure that young people are interested in this question, but not on a formal way. They don't like, as Philippe explained, official celebration, ceremony. They want other things. And we have to help them to find a way to remember, to honor, and to build future. But I am absolutely sure they are interested in the object.
And, Michal Gofrin is a very utopian, because she wants not only to include all the Jews, or all the new generations of Jews in the project, but also the non-Jews. She thinks that also the Christians and the Muslims should be included, and why not? But the way to do it is not an easy way. We had the experience with a group of French teachers who are not Jewish, who were in Jerusalem with her, and she wanted to have them participate to that kind of ritual of Seder, etc. So they did it because they had a lot of goodwill, but then they explained to me that it was not the way, it was too much for them. And I think that to be from a family of bystanders doesn't have the same meaning, have to be in a family of victims or in a family of perpetrators. Those are three psychological minds that are very different, and this is very well adapted for the children of the victims, including all the Jews who are more or less sons of the victims. Even the Jews of the Arab countries, etc., are part of the picture. But ask it from the non-Jews is a little bit complicated. Of course, in Germany, there is a specific problem of how to deal with the memory of the culprits. And what you have presented, Lisa, is an interesting answer to that question, that attempt to do something creative with the memory of the children of the perpetrators. And in France, most of the people were neither perpetrators nor victims, but they were bystanders. And it's right. It's not. It's okay with that. Who wants to? Yes, we will. You have.
Thank you. Question for our first speaker, Lisa. Thank you very much. It was very, very interesting. All of you, it was very interesting. You mentioned that 3 years ago you were working in Belarus, and we work in Belarus. I was just interested to know how you were working there.
So it's true that Belarus was one of our countries where we were able to work normally with memorial sites, institutions, etc. But since, sadly, as I said, just to illustrate a little bit, there would be young German volunteers coming to those institutions, memorial sites, museums, etc. Also social projects, as I mentioned, working with the elderly, the disabled, and the socially disadvantaged. I'm sorry. But since then, it has become very complicated because the public involvement in those questions got complicated and dangerous for most of our partners, meaning that we had to change our approach. So at the moment, we do not have any volunteers in the country, but we do try to keep as much as possible a link with the partners. And that's all I can say about it. We just really, really hope that it will be possible to redevelop our work there publicly also. Yeah.
Someone else had, yes?
Can I just add something? I would be happy to get you in touch with my colleague which worked in Belarus, if you would like to.
Thank you to all of you. And I think that this was, overall, this event was very insightful, very inspiring, and every one of you helped us to get there. What I wanted to say is, and I think this last session is more about kids, about the new generation. I was thinking that it was not only the Jews, the young generation of Jews, who have to understand these things, but I think that all of the younger generation have to understand that. I believe that Holocaust is not only about Jews. It is a problem for us, but it was something which is implying the responsibility of the entire mankind. It happened to Jews, but it did not happen only to Jews. And I want to remind you that mankind was very quiet when the Jews were murdered. But they started to understand in depth what Holocaust means when they started to think what else? Because after the Jews, there were the gypsies, there were the communists, there were the homosexuals, there were the people with disabilities. So where that ends? So in fact, they started from Jews, but it's a problem of all people. So what I feel a little bit sad about is that when the March of Life is mostly going there, you see only Jews. You see very few people who are not Jews and we are engaging in that. So I think we have to open somehow this problem for every person. And this is a responsibility for everyone. And how to do that is a very complicated situation, because if we stay, we Jews are remembering and are doing all these things which we have to, but it stays with us. So we need to open this, and we are talking now about the European Days of Jewish Culture. And as Ruth said yesterday, Jewish culture doesn't mean only Holocaust. There is so much about the Jewish culture, which is, if it is brought into attention of other people, maybe they will understand the depth of the problem and the depth of the discrimination, because Jews contributed so much. And if people will know these things, and I would like to see in this session of European Days, I would like to see philosophers, Jewish philosophers, musicians, and bring to people and bring people in. So when they understand all the beauty or all the quality of Jewish life, not only the ones who were killed, and they were not they were murdered, not assassinated. So I think the problem is so complex. But if we stay with the Holocaust as our problem, will stay. That will stay with us, and that will never go beyond that.
Yeah.
So I need to feel that non-Jews are taking the responsibility to understand, if not to take responsibility for what happened, but to understand what happened and what is the value of Jewish life.
I think that everybody agrees with the point of view you expressed, and there is it's not a question, it's a remark that everybody can share. I think if there is a last question, we may have it, and then if not, yes, so it will be the last one.
Okay, thank you. I have two brief questions. First of all, Philippe, you mentioned that you have plenty of policemen going through their special kind of programs, educative programs, and so I have first question: if there is training for trainers, so for other institutions, if other institutions can come to the Memorial of the Shoah and learn how to work with a specific group, and the other comment I would say that this idea of Seder, common So there, and commemoration is so beautiful. And just mentioning that non-Jews can also be the participant of it, it's really so beautiful. But I'm rather a bit afraid that those who will come, they will become kind of, they will play that they understand what's happening and the meaning and importance, to kind of pretending the culture they don't belong to. So maybe just to see, to watch, to hear, to listen, but not be as an active participant, because you should somehow to have a right to become a real participant. That's what I think. Sorry.
In the Shalom, for this Yom Hitkansut, we have non-Jews who are with us, and there is no problem. So we explain when they need information, but it works, really.
Yeah, it's a vast question. I don't think that you have the time to go very far. To answer your technical question, there is no specific training for those who will train the policemen. In fact, it's the same people who are dealing with youngsters coming from the schools and from the high schools that adjust to policemen who are a little bit older. They are adults, but they are young adults, and it's more or less the same people who are doing the same job of hosting them here on because there is. I didn't explain our method here in Paris, but we receive the policemen. They meet with someone who survived the war, either as a deportee, but who survived the camps, or who was a child whose parents were arrested and who succeeded in being hidden during the war and survived the war. So the testimony is very important. There is also a meeting with an historian. So this is the two pillars, the testimony and the historian. And then you have people who are ordinarily guiding youngsters. They are guiding the policemen with the same method. They have to present the place for youngsters. This is the Parisian method, but there are other methods, as you said, to training policemen who will train the other policemen. Huh? It's an interesting discussion in pedagogy. So I think that we have to conclude this session.
Yes.
To thank our guests and